Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and today we're doing another combat report. I have done a lot of fighting over the past month and a little bit. But before we get to that, I didn't really want to do just another round of fights, and I really need some driving practice with the overhead bar spinning design. So today, right now, we're going to build a robot very, very quickly, and we're going to put it in the 2v2s at ARC for this month's meet. So we're going to take, this is a party that we took to Australian National Antweights, and we're going to take this brand new robot. So let's get some building happening. So here we are, ready to go into this competition. In front of me I have the two robots, so the brand new robot that we've just built, and also this is a party which is basically unchanged from Nationals, except for I've now added a tiny little metal hook, and this metal hook is going to mean so that when it sits upside down, the weapon can still spin, which was a problem that I faced the last couple of times I fought this actually, is that without that metal hook, you can't actually spin the weapon upside down, which means it's very, very hard to get back over again when you get flipped upside down. So little change there to get all of that stuff up and running. So schedule for today, we are in a round robin group with 4 other robots. The top 2 of those go through to the semi-finals, and then the semi-finals winners go into the finals and win or lose the match. Then, so that's for this is a party. We've also got a little obvious, which is what this guy is called. He is going into the 2v2 rounds. So the 2v2 rounds work a little bit differently. For this competition, there are only 4 2v2 teams fighting. So we just fight each other team, and then the team at the end of all of that with the most points wins the day. So without further ado, let's get started. So first up, we have, this is a party going against Antimatter, a very, very low wedge that is really good at pushing around some of even the heaviest pushers in our competitions. Let's have a look at how that goes. So that wasn't my greatest fight. It did prove that this little roll hoop that I added in works brilliantly. It really does. It's amazing that I can flip myself back over that easily that was good in some ways. I mean, in other ways, he was way lower than me. He was pushing me around the arena. I just did not get around to the side to get that nice purchase on him to knock him away from me, which is a little bit of a problem. But at the end of the day, a little bit of improvement, which is always a nice thing to see. And one loss in the round robins is not a huge deal. Okay, so moving on to the 2v2 fights. This time we're going to put a little obvious in with my regular 2v2 partner Jaden from Raptor Robotics. This time around he only had Mr. Blade Jangles, so he was fighting that in 2v2s and in the A-League, which meant that we were a kind of unusual 2v2 team because we had two spinners on the same team, which is not normal because two spinners fighting in an enclosed arena, you can normally hit yourselves. So this time around we are fighting Smacker, Shatter, something like that, and Cut Above. So let's take a look at how that goes. So a pretty good first showing for a little obvious. It did a lot of damage in that fight. It knocked all of the silicon off of the wheels of Cut Above, which I was pretty happy about in actual fact. Considering it was just a first showing, it did pretty well. I did end up obviously driving it into the pit, which was kind of my bad, but we had to stop that fight because Cut Above's battery got exposed, so we won that fight because Cut Above was forced to forfeit due to having the battery exposed. So that's pretty good. So a little obvious is sitting at 1-0 right now, which is a really good start. Next up, we have Kinda Sorta. So we're going back into the A-League with, this is a party, and Kinda Sorta is a vertical spinning disc, which can sometimes be a saw blade, hence its name, and can sometimes be a titanium bar. So I was a little bit worried about this one, but you know, we was just going to see how this fight went. A vert against a vert, it's all about tip speed and weapon weight, and I think I have the weapon weight advantage going into this one, so let's take a look. And I am happy about this fight. This one goes really well. I got some really, really nice hits in there. There was one that I was a little unhappy about, but also kind of happy at the same time. I managed to hit him hard enough that I threw him over the pit and he landed the other side. I was kind of hoping for a hole-in-one, but you know, you can't always get what you want in this case. It was a little bit scary coming out of that fight because the axle inside this motor started eking its way out of the back of the motor. So by the time that fight ended, I didn't actually have my motor working all that well anymore. This motor has been in this robot for the past 3 or 4 tournaments, which is probably not the best idea. I probably should have changed it out, and it is starting to show. Yeah, did not like being in there for that long. Okay, and then we ping pong back to the 2v2. So in the 2v2s, this time we are facing the Force and the Forcey, I think was the name of the other one. The Forcey is basically a clone of Steve and Owen's bot blade tip, but done slightly differently, and it was being put into the 2v2 rounds. So once again, we have a fight for a little obvious, and once again we've got the 2 big spinners in there, so the whole idea for us is just to kind of stay away from each other and attack each opponent individually. So let's take a look at how that one goes. So that one went pretty well. I was, on the whole, pretty happy about that. I managed to get one of the Force's wheels off, or a couple of the Force's wheels off pretty early in that fight, which always makes me happy. That 4-wheel drive pusher is pretty powerful actually when it gets going at you, because that 4-wheel drive gives it a lot of torque and a lot of traction. It really can just kind of plow through robots if you let it. So having those wheels off really did help us in that fight. A couple of decent hits from this robot. I am kind of starting to believe though that I'm spinning the weapon just a little bit too fast basically. It seems to be more glancing off things and actually doing real damage. I think the way to fix that is actually going to be to upgrade the blade and have a proper dedicated blade for this thing that's a little bit longer than the blade that I've currently got now. This one was just one that I had cut as a generic Antweight blade, so it's not quite right for this style of robot. Eventually maybe we'll get a brand new one cut. But having said that, we won that fight. So this guy is 2-0 at the moment, which is amazing. This is like the best any of my robots have ever done. Then we move back over to a A-grade fight versus Escobar. So Escobar is, or was, it started as a shrapnel clone and has kind of evolved into its own robot in and of itself. It has a brand new shape, a different shape, and it's got lots of interchangeable weapon bars. One of them is a nice big disc, which I was kind of hoping that he was going to use for this fight, because a disc versus a vert means that I've got a lot of stuff to grab onto with his weapon. And he did not. He went for the bar, which kind of left me a little bit worried. Mostly, yeah, because the weapon wasn't really working that well. As I said, I kept having things pop out of it, and I was just a little bit worried about this fight. So let's take a look at that. Oh, so that one was a roller coaster. I lost the weapon relatively early. One of the wires got kind of caught around it, and also one of the pontoons, these two pontoons at the front, this pontoon actually got hit by the weapon and ripped up a little bit and kind of jammed into the weapon. That's what helped me with the whole losing of the weapon thing. So that was really sad when all of that stuff happened, and then it seemed like his weapon was down as well, and I was quite happy about that. But he did manage to get his weapon working again, which meant I took a lot more damage in that fight than I was really intending, especially as I think that's the last fight for me for my round robin, which, yeah, kind of was not good, meaning that I was probably going to go into the semi-finals with that amount of damage. I wasn't really looking forward to that, but it did pretty well. It did win. I mean, it was a bit of a pushy match win because, of course, the weapon went down. But as I said earlier, that is what happened with this. This motor is just an old motor, so I really should have swapped this out, actually. And then we get to the finals, or the final fight for the 2v2. So as I said, we only had 3 other teams that we were going to verse. This final team is Antimatter, who we first have faced already with This Is a Party. We've now got Antimatter over this side with a Little Obvious, and also another robot by the builder of Escobar that I just cannot name right now. It's a nice big wedge with 2 little grabby forks. And so I was just kind of hoping that I could pull one of those grabby forks off. That's all I really wanted to do. I wanted to ramp up him and hit one of those grabby forks with my weapon and see what happened. I was, of course, very nervous about antimatter being in the arena, as you saw in the previous fight with This Is a Party. It's really good at getting under robots and making weapons useless. So I was a little bit worried about that. So let's take a look at this fight. So that went way better than I was expecting. Obviously, we won that fight, which 3-0. It's incredible. It's a flawless, flawless record right now. So happy about that. And also, it means this guy's won. We're gonna have to. We'll get its trophy out in a minute, but we need to see how This Is a Party goes through the finals yet. But this guy's the 3-0 and he's won a competition, and I'm just like so happy about that. Everything went right in that fight. Not only did I get what I wanted to get and knock one of the little pincer claws off, I also managed to get a 1 in a million shot against just the right point at the back of Antimatter and pull his wheel, or the tire, off his wheel, which kind of jammed him up a little bit. That's why he kind of got stuck where he got stuck and didn't really move too much around from then. It was a little bit of a love tap from this blade in just the right lucky spot, and yeah, he actually got crippled from that, which, while sad for him, was just like a great feeling for me. So yeah, for a first outing, I would say A Little Obvious has done exceedingly well. Moving on from A Little Obvious now to focus on This Is a Party and the finals that This Is a Party is about to face. So This Is a Party goes up against Blade Tip first. Now Blade Tip is the original version of the Force E thing that we saw earlier in the 2v2 fight. It's driven by Owen, who drives very, very well, and I was a little bit worried about this one. I mean, I'm worried about a lot of fights, especially at this point where the robot is taking a lot of damage, the motor's kind of acting up a little bit. I didn't really know what to expect going into this one. Also, the robot at this point is now held together with hot glue. There's so much hot glue in under here holding the whole robot together. It's anybody's game right now. And we somehow managed to win that one. I mean, there was some really, really good hits in there on blade tip. He went flying a couple of times, which I was very happy about. I didn't really expect to get him down the pit, just because it's a hard thing to do with blade tip. Blade tip is always driven so well that it's not something you expect going into a fight with him. But we won that one, which means we're through to the finals and we've got a place. There is a first or a second in there for This Is a Party. This is like the best I've done at an ARC meet for ages. I think January this year was the last time I was in the finals at ARC. So this is incredible right now. And not only that, we are now going up against Mr. Blade Jangles, the robot that we've been fighting with for the whole weekend. We are now going up against in a all-out brawl. So it's time to have a look at that fight. So there you go, despite all of the damage that this thing took over the weekend and the worry that I had about this motor not spinning up and everything, and even the blade tip fight, it performed really well. That was a great fight in terms of number of hits that I got in on him. What ended up happening was he got high-sided. He has two little metal prongs out the front of his robot, and I hit them hard enough. They snapped the epoxy that they were in and levered upwards, and he got high-sided on those. However, the bottom of his robot was starting to come apart a little bit, and that's where the battery was, so he himself tapped out just so that we didn't have a lipo fire in the arena, which I guess was kind of good of him, but also I think, because he was high-sided, he couldn't really move around anywhere, so I probably would have tapped out in the same situation as him. But that means one thing, and one thing only. We have come away from this event with 2 first place, as a first place in 2v2s and a first place in the A's. Just hold on a second. Check it out. Oh my God, this never happens to me, and it's happened twice in one event. I'm so happy right now. These guys performed really, really well. So much so, there is going to be a minor tweak to This Is a Party. I think I'll do a reprint of the chassis. It's getting a little bit banged up, and I will swap that weapon motor over. But this guy, a little obvious, I'm going to charge his battery and stick him in storage. He's ready to go for the next time we do 2v2s, which I think is in 2 months' time. This Is a Party's going to get a reprint just because the chassis is getting a little banged up. But it worked way better than it's ever worked before. So I am sticking with this design. Like I said, it's just a few very minor changes just to help with some of the strength of these front pontoons, and then we'll be good to go. We're a little bit underweight, which means the weight is actually going to go into armament and into the chassis design, just because I think it needs it right now. But yeah, I'm so happy. This worked just so much better than it's ever worked before. I'm over the moon right now. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this one as much as I've enjoyed this one. This one has been great. And I will see you in the next video. I think next time we're going to be breaking down my very big 13 kilo overhead bar spinner and actually having a look at all of the internal components for that so that you guys know what I put into that robot to make it work as well and not as well as it actually did. So I'll see you then.